Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Amazing. I'm doing amazing. If I was doing any better, I'd be twins.
Oh, geez, that would be really dangerous.
That would be bad. The worst part is like figuring out which was the evil twin.
You mean which one is the good twin?
That could be it too. Turns out Arbender was the evil one. One of the all-time best episodes of
Futurama.
Futurama. Yeah, I mean, I did have a goatee for a long time, right? So and I guess I technically still do. It's just buried beneath the beard. That's how you hide your evil.
I too went for many a year with the goatee, and I like so many, I grew out the COVID beard, and I decided I like it, and it's staying at least for now.
Yeah, I grew out the COVID beard way before it was fashionable.
Yeah.
But it set me up for my second career as a mall Santa.
So you've said this before. Is this like happening, or is that actually a joke?
I considered it. I don't, there's a shortage of mall Santas right now.
I did not know that.
And I do have the real beard, but I'm like, do I have enough beard to be a Santa?
I think you do.
Yeah. I feel like I have a little beard envy for those Santas with like the really, really, really nice beard. There's a couple of people that I feel like definitely have a much nicer beard than me. And it's weird, right? Both with the goatee and the beard, like both times I got them to the point where they were like really nice and like I would say like almost perfect. And then for whatever reason I cut them and then grew them back, and they never grew back the same.
Right.
So I don't know.
All right. Well,
this isn't a hair episode though.
this is not a hairable ideas.
Yeah.
So how about we look at that topic? We said tonight we're going to be talking about scales, and kind of before we hit that go live button, we realized that there were a number of different ways to kind of approach that topic beyond just it's reptilian and it has scales.
Yeah, like for one, like it's right on par with Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Just came out, lots of dragons, lots of scaly things in that book. So it feels timely, but also, like a lot of times when we think about these topics, we like them to be kind of ambiguous and amorphous where they can mean different things. So, like you said, we were talking beforehand, while it could mean scales of a reptile or a reptilian creature or a dragon even, I don't think dragons like you if you call them a reptile. You're just a lizard. I think that's a good way to become breakfast. But also it could represent like the scales of justice and the weighing of things, both more nebulous and nefarious, like ideals and ideas, or it could literally be like physically weighing things.
And beyond that, even when you are playing music, you can play scales going through the notes, when whatever instrument or key you're playing in. So like there's definitely a variety of ways to approach this kind of idea. So
for one, I think it's like a great place to kind of talk about maybe puzzles and riddles in the game. And like that was even before, like I didn't think of the music scales like you had mentioned. But yeah, it would be easy to incorporate, and we have incorporated an out of the box encounter. There's a whole encounter that is based on that. And I should say Mike Gould did. He was the lead designer, and the encounter has to do with encountering a pixie in a jar of liquid, and the jar of liquid is suspended from a T, and but there's like a treasure on one side, the pixie hanging on the other, and it's just perfectly balanced. Well, there's a pool of acid around that T. So if you take one or the other, whatever you don't take is going to take an acid bath unless you can figure out how to stop that from happening.
Right.
And also like even if you just tip it too much, the pixie is in this really precarious situation where they could end up drowning in the bottle itself. So it's like, do you risk the life of the pixie to get the treasure, Or do you risk the treasure to save the pixie?
Yeah, it's a tough conundrum for a lot of players. I know that there are some out there who would definitely side A or definitely side B, because that's just the style of the player, or oh well, the
Yeah.
character that I'm playing would care more about this one or that one. But it's a fun thing to approach and see how the player slash character is going to respond, and then see what happens thereafter.
It makes me think of too of like a game both me and you participated in, run by um, Scott Garibay, and it was like our first one of our first experiences gaming with him. Not the first, but I would say like the first D&D experience, maybe. And it was this campaign, and we were hunting this criminal, and this criminal was a big time hunter, uh, and there was this event that only happens like every 100 years or 1,000 years or whatever, and I don't remember the name of the creature, but it
Mhm.
is like the ultimate prize if you can if you can hunt this creature, and it's also like highly magical, and like if you were to kill this creature and eat its heart, a couple things would happen. One, if you killed it, like it was going to just despoil the area and make it an anti-magic zone for 5 mile radius. Like some of this stuff is like very old school in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
way the way you put it together. But then if you ate the heart, you would get like a +5 to all your stats. Some it was something ridiculous like that, and like
Mhm.
the group we were with, or at least I know at least one of the people, Heather, was vehemently against harming this mythical creature and
Mhm.
wanted to protect it.
Right.
And I've and they were very convincing. So I think the rest of the group went along with that. And Scott was like shocked and stunned and surprised because he's like, "Man, the other group normally run for, they'd have been drinking that thing like a Slurpee." And I've also run with groups like that as well. Like,
Well,
I think Mark would definitely be in the heart without a thought.
I love my friends, and when you've got the ability to be like, look, I'm playing a game. There's definitely the avenue of approach of like, well, this is where I can be selfish. Here is where I can make those kinds of things. So you get to step away from the normal shell of a person who you are and be something different.
Uh,
Others are like, well, I even think in the RPG sense that is a line you just don't cross. And I've played a variety of types of characters over the years. I've been a part of many evil campaigns, some done well and some not so well. Um, but most characters I play, if you tell me like, all right, you kill this thing and it's going to like destroy 5 mile radius worth of land, like unless I'm going to take this thing out to like the desert to kill it because I need to have whatever it's got. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not really worth it. But back in the day, second edition style, probably.
yeah, I mean, it was a different era, a different time. The gods were petty and cruel.
You needed every advantage you could because the DMs were harsh.
So also, like, I decided to just kind of look up the definition of scales as well. And there's
Sure.
even another one I wasn't even thinking about. And it's like a skin condition.
Okay.
Thick, dry, flaky skin. So like that could be another thing. So like I know, that we generally do these as discussion topics, and then we'll go and we'll each do something in our newsletter. That may be in line with the things we talked about in these, chats, or maybe completely different. And and that's why like a topic like this is a lot of fun, because there's a lot of different ways we could go. Like, who knows what you'll get in the newsletter. It could be like Ted might make a puzzle or trap based on the music scale. Like, we might one of us might do another one, having to do with like the balance encounter, or even add into that encounter just because it was such a cool thing, and visually and aesthetically so cool. Or we might just talk about, lizards. You never know.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different avenues of approach here, but you could even try to combine them together. What if you were to make either a Dragonborn or a Lizard Folk or Yuan-ti bard, so you could have like the scaled Scald?
You don't want to make up a Dragonborn or Yanti weights and measurement official.
No, I don't think that'll be quite as amusing.
What
Uh,
class would that be? Hmm.
Guild Artisan.
Just a guild artisan. Well, I don't think it's a guild artisan. It feels like because they don't really make anything. I feel
Uh,
like they're more there to like. I don't know.
all right, town guard, like the
Yeah.
City Watch type scenario. Like,
It's a rogue. It's a rogue. They're on the take. They're corrupt. Bureaucrat. Is there a bureaucrat class?
I mean, in some RPGs, there absolutely is. But it's not something that people are all that interested in
Oh
to
yeah,
play.
Doug. Order of the scribe for a pencil pusher. That's true too. Like I definitely, if you're going backgrounds, I think it's more of a sage, right? It's like a
Okay.
very specific type. Because they probably have to have a lot of different knowledge in order to know the stuff that they're kind of like checking on, right?
Sure.
Because I imagine like they're you're overseeing shipments coming in on boats as well as wagons and stuff like that.
So it's kind of a weird thing, but like I don't know how often like one of those things is kind of gonna come up in the game. Whereas looking at it of balancing the scales of justice, I think
Uh
is far more of a common topic. I mean, even the last couple of days, I've been seeing, more and more things pop up in some of the Facebook groups I'm in, talking about, oh, my players did something, and I, as a DM, am viewing this as kind of a bad thing, but the players, see themselves as the good guys. How do I handle this situation, or how do I like let them know that they're not being the good guys that they think they are?
well, I'll circle back to that in a second. I will
Sure.
say, in my one of the early campaigns I played in, our GM definitely charged us adventurer taxes when we would go into a town. and and so I definitely feel like the bureaucrat angle of it can definitely be appropriate, and also like it makes a lot of sense because like adventurers come into a town, they disrupt the local economy oftentimes, but with an influx of treasure and magic items. Uh, who's more likely to get into a tavern brawl than a bunch of rowdy adventurers?
That is entirely true. I mean, we could do a whole write up on something like that.
Yeah. But like you said, so and actually like I did incorporate it into one of our newsletters. Sort of. I forget the actual the subject matter. I forget what we were talking about. But I used it from the stance of weapon binds and like
Okay.
laws being enforced when you go into a town of you can't just walk around with your sword, like it has to you need peace binds on them in order
Sure.
to do it. And like so I incorporated into that like the idea that you could also have false binds, and you could also pay for like the official documentation saying that you got the binds and stuff like that, and almost like insurance for like coming into the town.
Wow.
So I mean, yeah, for those people that like bureaucracy in their games, and oddly enough, like it doesn't come up in our games so much, but there's definitely things like episodes of the Scarlet Sisterhood where they're like trying to figure out how to create the bathhouse, and they like want to do the like, all right, we need to get our permits and that kind of stuff. And then
So, so Doug was saying that he believed that was D&D ideas law.
oh yeah, very well may have been. And then like Doug, one of his groups, like they loved doing the contract work when they would have new hires for their spell jamming vessel, and like they would like to do that and go out and like equip and buy all the stuff for the rooms for the cabins for the new hires, like because they're all like the blue collar workers, so like their fantasy was like owning and running a business.
Well, I mean, to each their own. I'm not going to say that that there's a wrong way to do this if everybody's having fun. Um, I just I don't know how much of an interest that really is to me. I don't like paying taxes in real life, and I don't want to be dealing with it in my games as a DM or player.
So now you have to torment Ted in the game. Send the tax man
I mean,
with their little scales to weigh all of your stuff.
I mean, that was kind of a whole premise to the Elder Scrolls trilogy that Critical Role ran. They did this whole thing where like the party was like a tavern owner or inn owner, and like the start of all the episodes was, for the most part, was the tax guy showing up saying, oh, well, this is wrong, or this is how much you owe. And it was a big hardship right at the onset. So like it's definitely a thing that's out there.
And I don't know if it's still on the shelf behind you, but one of the first Kickstarters I had backed was called Death and Taxes.
Yeah, we still have it. It's over here.
By Lesser, well, I know we have it. I just didn't know if it was like on the shelf or if it got rotated. It was called Death and Taxes by Lesser Known Games. Zach Laser, which that company kind of got consumed by Frog God Games. And the reason why I backed that Kickstarter was because it was a box set. And we hadn't seen box sets in like forever in the hobby.
Yep.
I don't know. Were they still putting out box sets on 3rd edition, or was that when they kind of died?
Nah, box sets was a 2nd edition thing.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to go back pretty far, and like that was kind of about like part of like the themes in Death and Taxes is like one of the major NPCs is a tax collector, so it does exist. But like kind of bringing back to scales, I would think like every merchant shop you would go into would technically, like, you're throwing your gold pieces on a scale or your silver pieces on a scale, because like they're going to be all different sizes and shapes. And I'm sure like one of the things to do if you didn't have that would be shaving, right? If you shave enough gold coins, eventually you'll get another gold coin, and a single gold coin is worth a lot to, in D&D to normal people.
Yeah, I mean that could be a whole thing of the dude who buys your magic item, or buys your items, your loot from the dungeon, winds up giving you shaved coins, and if you don't measure them, then you go to the next thing, and they're like, yeah, these things are all light. You need to pay more.
Yeah, so like what if each one of your coins is only worth nine silver pieces, right?
Right.
Instead of 10, and the next time you go in, or what if you just got a shady merchant and like his scale is rigged, and he's like, no, your coins are off. Everything costs 10% more because of that.
Or like you could even go crazier of what if they're falsely minted, and you break them open and inside isn't gold, it's other
they're
things.
All just gold plated. It's copper,
gold plated, right? Yeah,
or it's something else.
So like there's so many different adventures on that side of things, and that's far more of a tier 1 kind of campaign, because by the time you get into the higher levels, it's it
doesn't matter as much.
I've got more money, I don't care.
Yeah. Well, you always see the person bite the coin, right? Mm-hmm. They're biting it to see if it's gold plated or not, to make sure or if it's hollow.
Right.
Also, not very sanitary.
No. Especially during pandemic times.
Well, I feel like in the medieval days, everything was always pandemic times. Like plague was the norm.
I don't know. Maybe they just merchants have enough levels in Paladin that they're able to.
They're immune. Yeah, it's like what is it? Iocane powder. Instead of iocane powder, it's just like dirt and filth.
They've done it enough that they just don't care.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the halfway point, but it's a nice, close to middle. So I've got a copy of Asian Monsters from Legendary Games that they've sent us, as well as a copy of Vault of Magic from the wonderful people over at Kobold Press that I was a part of this project. I designed one of the items in it. So both of these are going to be going on our giveaway shelf for a future giveaway. I know it's probably going to be kind of after we run out of the two most recent releases of Tasha's and Fizzbands, but they're over here on the shelf for the eventual deliberation to you guys.
We still have Tasha's to give away.
Is it Tasha's or is it not Tasha's? Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
Okay, I was gonna say, damn, that was a while ago.
Nah, sorry, that was my brain fart. Yeah, so we've got the one set it's gone out, and then we've got another set to toss out there at some point. And
so if you want in on that action, you can either become a patron, join the newsletter. We have a way on the website where you can mail us through snail mail, an entry form, or you can we'll accept both the newsletter and I believe we'll accept both the newsletter and the Patreon submissions.
Yep.
As well.
And
so
then,
there's definitely ways to get in on that action.
Indeed. And it's like right now, like the lowest that we normally do is send out 2 books. So if you're talking like that's an MSRP of $90 to $100, depending upon where you're getting them.
Yeah. Not bad.
So, not bad for just signing up. And you get all kinds of cool stuff. We send out a weekly newsletter, beyond the initial intro of jumping through hoops to make sure that you honestly want to get the things we're going to send you. It's one email a week. So, and it's full of things related to what we've been talking about here.
Content, more content, all about the content. So, Scarlet Sisterhood, that game actually started with a kind of a reptilian bent to it, because one of the players wanted to have troglodytes in their games because they felt like troglodytes were underused monster in D&D, and so I figured out like the most odd and weird way to include troglodytes in a game, and did.
You've said this before, and are you able to call out who it was that asked for that?
Yeah, Vex. Vex is like,
okay.
We haven't seen. I hardly see troglodytes in games, and so they're like, I would like to face some troglodytes, and I was like, I could probably make that happen.
I thought you did a great job, and the entire 60-some episodes are over on the main channel. If you guys want to go check that out, I thought it was a lot of fun. I've watched it, I think, twice now. Dave and those people did a wonderful job playing that game. The core cast, was solid, and there were a number of people that kind of came in and came out that added a lot of fun to it as well.
It was a fun game. Like, that was just a fun group to run for.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like the right amount of serious and silly, and they all brought something like unique and special to that game.
Well, as you mentioned, as you earlier mentioned, like there's that, we want to make a bathhouse and we got to get the permits and we got to get that's normally stuff where I'm like, yeah, that's a hand wave thing. Like, is it going to cost something? Here's $3 gold. Like,
yeah. Well, some of it was kind of fun to add in.
Sure.
Like what, kind of like, what happens, in there, right? Like, because like we've definitely gotten, questions about, hey, my players want to do X. They want to start a tavern, right? Or something weird, right? And the DM doesn't know what to do with it. And they're like, I don't know if it's that they get intimidated by it or they feel like it's derailing the game. But when I see something like that, I'm like, okay. I just try to figure out how can we incorporate that, into the game instead of being a disruption in the game? How can we make it, add to the game? So like they wanted to create a bathhouse, and like before the bathhouse opens, I had like a catastrophe kind of happen based around the bathhouse and them adventuring there, and also like one of the people they hired did something kind of like crazy to solve to come up with a solution, and didn't like get anyone to okay it. They're just like, this will be fine, and decided to try and heat the bathhouse by tapping into the energies of the elemental plane of fire. Right, so like I'm like, okay, and then like there's this adventure where they get sucked into, or no, they don't even know. First, like I think creatures from the elemental plane of fire start leaking into the bathhouse, and then and then they end up in in the plane of elemental fire for an adventure. I think that's what happened anyway. Ted probably knows better than I do at this point.
Yeah, I actually do remember that. I do believe you're correct that creatures came out first, and then they had to go in and solve the issue and correct it. It was definitely a lot of fun to watch. But
that feels like so long ago at this point too.
I mean, it was. I mean, it's been years since that game ended.
Yeah, there's been a request for a reunion. I don't know if I could get everyone back together to play, but that would be fun.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still connected to Robin, and I can still get a hold of Jen, but I don't even sadly remember the names of the other the others who were there as regulars.
So it looks like the Scarlet Sisterhood ended on 69 episodes. That was not intentional. But that was also, I think that's the first campaign I took to 20th level too. Now they didn't start at first; they started like 5th or 6th.
Right. I do believe it was 5th.
But I mean, 69 episodes. That means we would have we played a little over a year.
About a year and a half, I believe.
And a weekly game. Obviously, with that, you're always going to have some that you kind of miss here and there, but yeah. So like that was the first game where I actually went to that high level, where we had a couple divine interventions happen.
Yeah, divine interventions are another thing that can be wonky, because you never know what the player's going to ask, and then it's an interpretation of like, all right, how do I handle what you're asking for within the confines of what I think is within the power of a deity that wants to help you out, but not just utterly screw up everything I'm working on.
Well, I mean, really, like that'll definitely tip the scales if you invoke the power of a deity into and like it's come up a couple times in your games, right? Has it come up a couple times or once?
No, I believe Corvid has rolled it successfully twice. So like the last one of fix the world. I'm like, what? Like the whole idea was like the world's not getting fixed.
Yeah.
So that one was kind of odd, but thankfully like we did it at the end, and I was able to like take some time and really think about it. And I'm like, all right, I think I've got a good approach for how this is going to work. And there was a whole like guilt factor laid in of like, all right, is this really what you want? I'm like, yeah. And like all of a sudden a lot of people died. It's like, what?
Oops.
But we do have a question from Crazy Hermit, and I don't know how I would answer this, but it says, besides your own material, because obviously we're biased, what's your favorite third-party supplement?
Let's see. We've done work for Kobold Press, Vast Grim, and also what is it? The City of Bards. At this point, those 3. No, I would say like So I won't answer for Ted. I'll answer for me. I will say that usually I say like the Holy Trinity, the trifecta for me has been Nord Games, Kobold Press, and Frog God Games, as far as putting things together, and not in any specific order either. Like they all do different things and they do them well. But that being said, like 2C Gaming's really good. And there's like a bunch of companies that maybe have done some one-off things, but Monty Cook Games now has their own 5e campaign setting as well, right? So, uh, which I haven't really looked into, but it's also Monty Cook Games, so
so you know it's going to be good.
I just know it's going to be good, right? Like when a company like that throws their hat into the ring, and also like right now, Rich Lescaflair from Alligator Alley Entertainment has a Kickstarter going on. We're going to have him on tomorrow, I think, to talk. And he did the Aspergenesis system, which is kind of like a science fiction 5e reskin, which is really good. The guys from Absolute Tabletop puts together some really good things that are both D&D and not D&D. So, like right now is like you're living in the golden age. You have lots of choices and tons of things that you can look at. Not Modifius, Free League. I don't know. I think they're either partnered they're partnered somehow. But I don't think they're actually the same company. But I think Free League, like they're taking one of their games and turning it into a 5e thing as well. And also Free League has done a fantastic job with putting together other systems and games and using properties like aliens and what was the other one? Tales from the Loop. So like you just like throw a stone, you're going to hit one.
So to kind of get to the heart of the question, is like, what is your favorite supplement? That's going to be really difficult because you're talking about like, am I approaching it from the player side, from the DM side? That's going to be vastly different. I'm a huge supporter of creature curation, the world of Revelo, Brian Collin, however you want to approach that subject. So like I've got his box set here behind me because I love the world that he's created and the vast difference between what Revelo looks like and your typical fantasy world, because it's not your typical humans and demi-humans that everybody's used to seeing. Some of those things do exist, but for the most part, it's all of these brand new whole cloth races, which I absolutely adore. But not everybody is into Brian's art and art style and wants to play in his campaign world, so they might not want to go in that direction. From a player standpoint, Deep Magic from Kobold Press is absolutely fantastic because it's got a whole bunch of great subclasses and spells, player options that you can really play with. And I was a big supporter of all of the Kobold Deep Magic series that they were doing over on the DM's Guild.
We reviewed all of them before they compiled them into one book,
and then they compiled them into the book, and I'm a big fan.
There's a good amount of them, and there was only one of them that we were like met on.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was bad. It just was like, all right, it could be better. Scenario. It's not like it was broken.
Yeah.
And then like the Kobold Press, like down here, like they've got was it over 1,000 pages worth of monsters between creature collection, Tome of Beasts 1 and 2, or creature codex. But then like if I look at all of the great stuff from 2C Gaming, the epic level handbook and Tyrants and Hellions, there's so much great stuff that's out there. It depends upon what I need right now.
The scale is overwhelming.
It is like, so like it has to be what is my go-to right now. Like that's my favorite. Sure.
You also I know you've definitely throughout the years with the different games have pulled from the different Kobold Press monster manuals, right? And used them or reskinned monsters from there. I am actually just a lot more likely to make stuff up on my own and go to a third party.
I do a combination. And there are times where I will look through books for inspiration to be like, okay, well, this inspires me to go in this direction with this monster, and I'll take and bites off of different things and make my own thing. My campaign finale this past weekend was much more simplified than other things that I've done, especially for finales. So like I had one monster or one humanoid, and two very pared down Tarrasques, and then some spell effects and things that happened on the battlefield. Um, was definitely a lot of fun. And the players really thought the scales were not in their favor. After round one, they're like, all right, we've used all of our resources and everything is still alive and kicking. We did maybe 100 damage. Oh, shit.
Yeah, it wasn't looking good for a little while. There was definitely a round where I was like, huh, I can only take one more round of that.
Well,
Before I'm
there
out of
were
here.
5 players in the game. One of them, there were 2 attempts at domination. One of them succeeded. 2 of the players got dropped, and one of the characters, 2 of the characters got dropped, and one of the characters in the final moments, wound up dying. But that was all because like the player had asked for like a self-sacrifice moment. But the party was level 16, so I took 2 Tarrasques and I pared them down to. I took away their reflective carapace. I took away their legendary actions.
Did you pare them down or did you scale them down, Ted?
I scaled them down. That's it. I took away their legendary actions. I gave them 2 attacks around. I didn't do any kind of grappling or swallowing because that would really take them out of the fight.
I feel like getting swallowed might have been beneficial at some point. Like, it would take less damage. The one round, you're like, someone was like, oh, good, I didn't get dominated. I'm like, dominated? I think that's almost like a break from taking damage.
Yeah, but then you got, the fact that the player who was dominated did like 90 points of damage to a party member and dropped him.
I know. And then from then on there on, that player was like, you didn't just do 90 points of damage to the other side. So, he felt like he used his like mega move on the other player, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was a proud papa moment. I'm like, I never know until it happens at the table. I never know like what's the player gonna do. He had one round because after he did that movement, he shook it off and wasn't dominated anymore. So it's like, okay, well, but in that moment, he's like, all right, I move up to this guy. I use my bonus action to turn invisible. So therefore I now have advantage on the attack roll. And I cast, inflict wounds at my highest level.
Well, before that, they used the Grave Cleric ability to make them vulnerable to the next attack.
Yes, that was the piece that I was missing. I'm like, I know there was something about doing the extra damage.
Yeah.
So,
and he usually turns invisible, fishing for the 20.
Yeah, he wants the advantage to kind of crit with it, because then it would have done even more. And I think I might have outright killed him.
Maybe it might have been close.
But down he went, and I'm like, oh shit, this is rough.
I mean, like, even my character is on the low end of hit points, and I still have like almost 120.
Okay.
So outright killing, I mean, depending on how much you'd taken before,
right? Yeah,
is probably over 200 points of damage.
Well, I mean, if he did 90 and then it was a crit, I mean, that would have been 180.
Yeah, that would have been close.
It could have been there. I don't know how much he's got as a warlock. So
he's got some. I think he's got some fighter levels too.
That is true.
I don't know if he's got enough fighter levels.
But the scales were tough, and I put it out there. And I'm like, all right, Tarrasque with 200 hit points and those modifications aren't a small foe. But I'm like, how's it gonna go? But I also knew like that the villain was easier to hit than the Tarrasques, and you guys kind of focused fire on the Tarrasques more than on the mage. And I put a life link between them that was like, all right, he's the last to go. They've got to go through the Tarrasques first. But you didn't find that out until like it was almost over anyway.
Yeah.
literally the first Tarrasque had 7 hit points left.
So if you happen to be a Patreon of Nerdarchy, you can go over there. There's a Patreon post up from that game with a bunch of the pictures from all the cool minis that Ted put out,
including I don't know if you put that picture up, but Dave rolled an attack with advantage and rolled double 20s.
I did, yeah. That's up there as well. So Brian Smith, we're talking about like lizard scales. Well, scales could be a bunch of things. It could be, the scales of justice, the scales that weigh things, the scale and scope of something, music scales, lizard scales. However you want to do it. Like we mentioned in the very beginning, one of the out of the box encounters is called balance, and it is literally about balancing the scales of life and death, treasure and not treasure. Which is a lot of fun. And I feel like a lot of those things are cool elements to add into your game for the exploration pillar or for traps and puzzles.
But it's a matter of like how you want to approach the situation and how you want to look at scales in your game. So like I like that balance encounter. It's definitely a lot of fun. I haven't run that one yet, but it is something that I've definitely got on my, all right, I definitely want to add this in at some point in time. But like I feel like it's got to be in a not you guys group. Like running those things just feel weird, running them for the people who helped write and review and edit.
Just me. I mean, really.
That's true.
Yeah, the rest of the group maybe not so much. Our other group where I think Carlos has it, so he may have run some of them.
Right.
Well, you know what? Kirk might have them and run some too. So I don't know.
That's true.
Never mind. You're gonna have to make up your own new one.
As always, guys, if you have any questions, you can throw them up in the chat. Like Spike Murphy Rose has ever ended multiple campaigns with a single final session. I mean, technically, that's what we did with the D&D in a castle. Each of us ran.
Yeah, that one session ended 3 campaigns.
Five. We all ran 5 sessions, and then the 3 groups got together. 17 players over 2.5, 3 hours. We ended the campaign there. That's the only time we've combined groups for that kind of stuff.
Dude, I would not recommend that either. Like.
It was something
like you're the DM and running 3 different campaigns and then doing that. Like we had 3 co-DMs with 3 DMs.
Yes. And it went as smooth as possible for 20 people playing D&D in the same room. But I don't think anyone who walked away from that was like, man, I want to do that again. Like many people thought it was awesome and great. And I'm happy that we did it. But it's not something that like
okay, you want to experience it once and be like, okay, that was super cool. I don't need to do it again.
But like some of the feedback I got was like for that final session, it was 3 hours long and most people got 2 to 4 turns. It's like, oh, look at that. Like with that many people in the room, even if you've got a engine rolling of initiative, even if you're pre-rolling and trying to do all of your math on somebody else's turn, it's still 17 people going before you. It's like,
I mean, I felt like it was pretty streamlined, but even still, like there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and like I said, I felt it was fantastic, and as a DM, I'm happy that we did it. But it's not something I would ever plot and plan for again.
Right, because you figure, right, there's 20 of us, and like if everyone just takes 5 minutes, right, that's like 100 minutes. That's like an hour. It's an hour and 40 minutes right there, right? And so multiple turns. So it's like if you figure that out, and you figure us running the game actually would get probably more time. So it detract from their time. So it's like they might have gotten 10 minutes a piece. So spread out over that, that 3.5 hours or whatever.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah,
Uh,
so when you kind of like break down the math of it, some ideas just sound cooler than they really are. Now, I will say, like, that ran cool, and like I feel like people were engrossed and engaged in what was going on. But like also like they had like the huge build up, to it, like because like you said, there was 5 sessions building up to this final session, and like most people are in like another country, and like there's all this stuff going on. So like there's a lot of energy going into that I think assisted in the atmosphere and the mood.
yeah, and it was great, and it went as well as anyone could do it. But Spike says that that they did that. They ran 3 campaigns that came to the same conclusion. Around 14 PCs for 14 hours spread out over 2 sessions. My heart goes out to you. That sounds exhausting. 14 people all in the same room for 2 7-hour game sessions.
Yeah,
Had to be rough.
it is a lot. It's a lot.
But
But
Brian,
again, like
Brian,
sometimes some things are kind of cool to do at least once and experience it, and then you go, "All right, do I need to do it again?" The question is, Spike, would you do it again? Do you want to do that again, or is it like, oh, you found out what it was about?
right. Um, Brian says, I'm homebrewing some unique micro mechanics for my players. For example, a dueling system based on rock, paper, scissors. Any thoughts on any cool powers that use dice in a different way?
I don't know, like, so like resolving something like that in game with such an arbitrary kind of mechanic like rock paper scissors is, I don't know that that's going to feel satisfying as a player. I think if you're playing D&D or whatever system you're playing, you probably want to use that system. So, you know, while doing cool dice tricks and figuring out things to add in might be cool. I don't think I don't know if simplifying it's the way to go.
I ran a game, and I've talked about this numerous times on the channel, where I simplified D&D to some extent. I had run a game in the commuter lounge at my college, and all of the players were all their own separate voice and own separate character sheet in my buddy Jim's head, and we ran this whole game, but I wasn't dealing with any extra dice. Everybody knew they only ever needed a d20. If you're making an attack roll, if you're making a skill check or anything else, you're casting a spell, you tell me what you're doing, and we narrate what winds up happening thereafter. So it was a very narrative heavy game, a lot of fun, but very simplified in regards to we're just using a d20, and it allowed the story to really come out and be more a part of what's going on than the dice and any of the real mechanics. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, like, you can still have the concept of what the characters are and just narrate what it is based off of how good the die roll is, um and attach yourself more to the story and the choices and where everything goes, as opposed to more getting into the nitty gritty of mechanics.
Were you guys bastardizing third edition or second?
It was 3.5,
Yeah.
but
Which almost like pushed it back to more like second.
well, I mean, realistically, it's far closer to freaking Quest than D&D at that point in time.
Yeah.
It was just a D20 roll, but like the characters still had like the modifiers that we were familiar with. So like it wasn't just look at the D20 and roll it. It was,
You
well,
invented Quest without even knowing it.
you know, but oh, I want to cast this particular spell. Okay, great, you can do that. Whatever the normal effects are great, but we're not rolling damage. What's the D20 say? Okay, we're gonna do that. So, all right, well, that's how good you get. And sometimes it would just, I wouldn't even go that far. Okay, I cast Cone of Cold. Well, do I think Cone of Cold should kill these things? Yes, great. No, okay, well, they're still there. They've taken some damage. Let's see what happens next. Um, but it was far more about the exploration and social pillar, as they got to kind of explore the world and try to figure out why all of these people were in the main character's head. And you
Turns out because a lot of people hang out at the commuter lounge.
well, that was definitely a thing. And
Not even funny to end that game with like the main character waking up in the commuter lounge surrounded by people that are been talking over their unconscious body.
well, that would have been a fantastic thing. But I was too novice of a GM
I
to
know.
think about that.
That would be straight up the Wizard of Oz ending, right?
Yeah.
And you were there, and you were there.
That is
Oh
that
well,
is
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, and I don't think I could recreate that game. The
Yeah.
magic required, you know, that kind of setting that had, the ability to have people come and go. Um, but it was still, as much as I love the groups that I play with, as much as I love many of the games that I've been a part of, I want to say that was like the most successfully, for my opinion, game I've ever run, just because it was so alien from everything else that I've done.
Yeah.
And the I keep using this corny phrase, but like the magic of just so many people approached me of like, it was the first that I was aware of anyone watching D&D. And the people who were watching, some of them would approach and be like, hey, I want to get in on this. I'm like, okay, well, you give me a character idea that isn't like anything else that's already out there, and we'll talk. So people would come back, oh, I've got this thing. Okay, great. All you need to do is just start talking when it's when you got an opening.
So how
Yeah,
about what about like for Brian's initial question?
sure.
Like, this might be like a really easy hack, especially if you have access to the age system. Just roll a d20 and 3d6 and use their stunt system.
Mm.
Like if you want cool special maneuvers to use, like it's got tons of them, and like I don't know if there's a generic system or if it's fantasy age and then they have like all the different ones. But so the way that system works is it's a system based off of 3 die 6. And one of them is your stunt die, and two of them are like the die you use to figure, or you use the 3 dice to you add them up and add your score to them to decide if you are successful. Well, if you match the same number on 2 dice, then you look at your stunt die and see what that number is, and that's how many stunt points you have to play with. And then there's all these different stunts you can kind of pick from, and you can even do like a simplified, right? If you had access to those books where you kind of like print out the stunts so you can have them just like right there and handy, because that's the hardest thing about the stunts and the age system is like figuring out the right stunt for the right circumstance.
But if you're looking at adding extra powers and things to your game, there's also hit dice to heroics, made by
Well,
Nerdarchy,
that's true.
that you could always use as well, and that allows you to use your hit dice, a resource that many different groups that I know of don't really use. So that's why we came up with that allows you to do a whole bunch of cool stunty type things. And there's been some kind of talks off camera, in house about expanding upon that stuff. And I've definitely been toying with some ideas of what else could we do.
Well,
So
I mean, we have another product we're kind of have in the works where I definitely want to incorporate some of those things from from hit dice heroics, the hit die, some other features I feel like in 5e they're underutilized, and ways that you could use them. Um, but while that's an awesome supplement, I guess I just didn't think of that as far as what like for the what Brian was talking about.
well, you mentioned stunts, and a number of things in there kind of fall in that direction. So
Yeah, yeah. Give up your life force and you do cool tricks. Which of course, like you could like that, you could even just use that for inspiration, too, for coming up with something. Like if you want to do cool things during the duel, either for the bad guys or for your players, be like, just all you have to do is spend your hit dice, and it's a limited resource depending on what level you are. You know, you get a couple things out of it.
So we're getting down to the wire, but apparently Brian is already using hit dice to heroic. So awesome. Glad to know that it's out there. I've offered that stuff up to a number of the groups that I play with, and I love it when I see someone like, oh, can I do this? It's like absolutely.
Yeah. Kurt was big for doing that. He's always
Oh
pulling it
yeah.
out.
Oh yeah.
He's got his printed out dice heroics.
I don't think he used it with Corvid, but he definitely used it with Henri.
Yeah, it came up in the past. I always forget we even have that, to be honest with you. But I always forget about stuff as well, so.
Well, there's so many resources that we have access to. It's like, what are you gonna use? So, but I've got some stuff, thoughts on, what kind of things can you do with hit dice feats? What kind of things can you do with, hit dice options that everybody can use regardless of class? Monsters that have powers that they can use their own hit dice type things. But what about
I feel like
monsters?
any kind of blood magic just screams hit dice to me.
Yeah. So there's definitely lots of room to explore with that particular concept that I don't think anybody else is playing with. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's one of the areas that like Wizards of the Coast has been really disappointing. It's like they come up with these modular blocks of the system, and then they really haven't done anything with. They just recently started like introducing more uses for hit dice, and by introducing I mean it's like one or two. I don't remember exactly where they are. Like I think in the Ravenloft thing, under the Dark Gifts, there's at least one of them that does something with your hit dice, and then I feel like maybe there's one thing in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, like in one of the subclasses, but very very little. Disappointingly so. It's like it doesn't feel like they're taking any huge risks or swings.
Yeah, it's who knows, maybe with the release of whatever they're calling the 5th edition expanded, that's not 5.5.
Definitely not 5.5. Even though every one of us is going to call it 5.5 watts, we don't care what you say.
Perhaps there'll be a relook at that kind of stuff, who knows. But it is what it is, and we can't really make that change. We can't really make the make we won't know until it actually shows up.
Yeah, Brian Smith, I love the monsters using their dice. I designed a rune for the Rune Knight that throws a doom clock on an enemy that ticks down, and when it hits 0, half their HD or hit dice and damage. Pretty sweet. It definitely gives me like Mordekaiser vibes from League of Legends. I don't know if you remember that guy with the giant morning star.
Yeah,
The undead guy. He put the thing on you, and if it killed you, then you get raised as one of his like spectral minions.
Yeah, always fun deal. Fighting against yourself or fighting against your ally who's been turned into a bad guy.
Yeah. Well, maybe, or maybe one of the enemies is now your ally because he's on your side.
Well, there's always that.
There's always that. So, Ted, we're just about up on the hour mark. Do we have any final?
I don't have any bookkeeping. This week I showed off the 2 books that have been already put onto the giveaway pile that'll go out to hopefully one of these wonderful people out there in the near-ish future. We got your game. You're gaming with the fans sometime later this month.
Yeah, the 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. I think I've only had one person respond, so I will be going into the Patreon. I think this Thursday or Friday is my RSVP time. Okay. And if I have not heard from anyone by then, I'm going into the Patreon to look for players for that game.
So if you're a patron, be on the lookout. And end of the week if you want to get in on a game with Dave. Next month it'll be my turn to get in on the game. And considering how few games I'm going to have in the month of December, I'll be itching to get something going because let's see here. I've got of my.
Well, we got our Tuesday night game, so it's not like
well, yeah, but at most we're going to have 2 of those. And if Robin happens to become unavailable and we decide to not play without them, then we might not have any. But there's no Dawnbringers.
I don't know, man. Like 7th, 14th, 21st, 28th. They all seem like days that aren't a problem.
Right. Well, the way the numbers fall, we'll end it on the 14th.
Okay, so that's 2 weeks of December. So you got at least 2 games.
But so like I said, most of my groups are not happening. I've got a kids game scheduled. I've got the fan game scheduled. But all of the regular games that I typically run are not taking place that month. Like Untraditionally Arcane, everybody has taken the month of December off. But speaking of that, this Friday we are having session 9. If you want to come back to the channel, then you can come check that out. We will be down 1 player, but we will continue on without them and see how the party has dealt with the interesting end that we had.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll end up with at least like 4 games in December minimum. So, what are you gonna do? It's the holiday season. Life sucks.
Indeed.
So, it gets busy. It gets hectic. But hey, we'll be back tomorrow night, and we'll be playing some 5e D&D. Cups, did I totally miss the light? Well, technically you didn't miss it, but we are about to hit the end button. So you're here for the very tail end, but you can go back and watch it.
Yeah, just scroll back to the beginning and see what you missed.
Scroll back to the beginning. So we'll be back tomorrow night for Steven's game. I think that's session 8.
I believe so.
So yeah, so we only have 4 more after tomorrow night, so include tomorrow 5 nights. And we got some cool guests coming on this week. I know I got Adam Bradford on Thursday, Brian Colin on Friday, and tomorrow's Rich LeFlair. He's got a Kickstarter out that's kind of like sci-fi fantasy for 5e D&D. On Thursday, I think we're going to be talking about Nexus for Pathfinder, and whatever else Demi-Plane is kind of up to. And then, Brian will be on because we're going to be talking about his network chatter show, which is kind of about the Vast Grim game. We're going to talk about the Vast Grim live play that I've been playing in, as well as Infinite Black has a Kickstarter going on.
I believe that actually, their 1-Up dice, I believe that actually launches tomorrow.
The 1-Up dice. So, and they look fantastic.
They look amazing. If you back within the first 24 to 48 hours, you get like an additional free D20.
Yeah.
And that's something that Infinite Black has always done. I always back those things, and I'm still waiting for my my next set of dice from them. I was in the wave 1 and it hasn't gotten here yet. But there's another Kickstarter starts tomorrow. What do I do?
I think I now have enough store credit over there to get dice. Because part of the way they're paying us for the live show, which is really cool, they're actually paying us, is partially in money and partially in store credit.
Sweet.
So
their dice are great. So
yeah. So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.